me co-host so I can share my screen. I just have a PDF of an example of my process that I can show in a minute. So first of all, good morning or good afternoon in the world, I guess, depending on that. As Perry said, my name is Brad Dean, and I am the founder and owner-operator of an agency, marketing agency in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, called Propelled. We're a full-service marketing agency. We start with strategy, and then we build out from there. We do all executable things, branding, websites, content creation, all that kind of fun stuff. Personally, my marketing career goes back over 20 years now. I got my start. Actually, I got sort of an unofficial start when I was a signed musician with Sony Music in Canada back in the day, and I used to hang out with all the design and marketing nerds in the office at Sony HQ, and that was my sort of that was my village, and I used to really. They were all excited about the stuff I was doing, and I was excited about all of the content they were building and how they were approaching things. And so unofficially, I kind of got indoctrinated into that world back then. And then shortly after leaving the music industry, I got into the print world and was working as a designer there. And I worked as a business consultant and strategist early on. And I've always been very aligned with balancing form and function. So I feel like there's always going to be a sort of optimal point, or maybe a point of diminishing returns for balancing out form and function with things. So I'm not that kind of designer who's gonna take the design to the end of the mountain, and I don't care if it does the job or not. It looks great. And I'm not the strategist who's gonna, not take a look at the importance of design theory and that kind of thing as well. I've always tried to find a balance there. So as of recently, I started Propelled coming up on 7 years ago now. And we started it with the idea of being able to take our clients from the beginning of their journey right through to the end and beyond, and be able to support them throughout. So in order for us to be able to do that, we always start off with a strategic component. We have people come to us asking for, say, I need a new website, or I need a video created, or I need social media support, whatever it is. We always backtrack and address strategy, targeting, all of those things at the beginning, which leads us to our conversation today. It's something that's close to my heart, and I really genuinely enjoy talking about regularly. And as much experience as I feel that I have in this area, I also love speaking engagements like this, because I also like to be challenged. So at any point that I'm walking everybody through my process, if you have any questions or something doesn't make sense to you, call me out. Call me out on it. If you have great input, let me know. Because if you're free to do that and you're comfortable to do that, we're all going to be better after this call than we were when we first started. So I appreciate everybody's experience as much as I can absorb from you as well. I'm happy to do that. So we have people come in for a wide variety of reasons. We always start with strategy, and it's critical. This goes to lifestyle design just as much as it does for business design. If we don't know what our ideal lives look like, what's going to make us happy, then how can we expect it just to magically happen? In the business world, I have a friend and an affiliate of mine in Canada who built their business model with the idea and the goal in mind of breaking even, which I'm sure I don't need to tell you all here is probably the worst starting point you could ever have for your business. You might as well, be setting out to fail, because especially if you're just starting out, if your lofty goal is to break even, you're going to have a really hard time. So the point of that is that, we want to, at the beginning of something especially, and it's always important to address this right out of the gates, before we talk about messaging, before we talk about branding, before we talk about content creation and all these other things, we have to have a a very firm and detailed grasp over what our ideal situation looks like. Are we going to hit that ideal situation? Maybe, maybe not. But if we're not shooting for it, we're definitely not going to hit it. So that's a big part of the process that we introduce and address with our clients, and it's a non-negotiable. We can't be successful in supporting our clients unless we have a great game plan right out of the gates, and we know exactly what their ideal scenario looks like. So I guess to start, what I can do is I can share my screen, and I'll take you through an example of how we approach developing this for a client. And again, at any point, if anybody has any questions or wants to dig deeper on something, please let me know. Let me get this open now. Perfect. Okay, let me know if everybody can see my screen. Good, awesome, thumbs up. Okay, so this is just a random research and analysis overview that I pulled out from a client from a couple of years ago. It seemed fitting. So the first thing that we need to do, once we've identified that we are working towards outlining, we already understand why we need to outline what our ideal target market looks like. The very next thing that we need to do is we need to start looking into demographics, right? Demographics and psychographics. We need to figure out, whatever the industry is that you're in, we need to get a complete landscape of what that industry looks like in a very general way. So we're going to start pulling data from, in Canada, it was Stats Canada. And, you can pull data from all kinds of creative outlets. I come from a sort of underground music, punk rock world where you don't have a lot of money and you need to get really creative and figure out how to do things on your own. A good example of that is, one of the ways that I pull data for, especially geographic data for people, is if you go to high-level realtor websites like realtor.com, and you put a pin down or you pick a house in a specific neighborhood and open up that house, it actually gives you a complete outline of the demographics in that neighborhood. It's free to access. And if you want to get a much larger catchment, then you can just pick houses, sort of maybe pick 10, 15 houses in that area, pull information from those resources, and then extrapolate what that region as a whole is sort of trending towards. So I haven't heard of anybody else using realtor.com and their demographics tools to support marketing research, but it's been an invaluable tool for me. And again, it's just one of those sort of creative workarounds where you can start to pull some of this information for yourself or for your clients. Here, there we go. Yeah, so here again, we're just pulling high-level rough information on the industry as a whole, so that we can understand, for the dental industry here, who has visited a dentist in the last year, who only goes, for an emergency, who has insurance, who doesn't. Once we start to understand these things, economic breakdown, who's making what, certainly. Those factors are going to come into play when understanding who you or your client's target demographic is. Is your price point for something very high? Do you have few sales throughout a year, but each sale is $100,000? Or do you have 100,000 sales in a year and each sale is $5? So understanding what it is that you're trying to draw from this information is critical. But then putting it out, laying it out in a chart and getting it organized like this is a huge benefit and a really great starting point. So yeah, this sort of continues on with that kind of information. So this is the golden part. So this is what I'm really excited to talk about. This is something that not a lot of people do, but it's sort of a storytelling, creative component of building target demographics. So what we do is, we pull raw data and we get sort of a general sense of the marketplace and statistics and, all that kind of stuff in black and white. Great. How do we use that? Okay. So we know that we can input target demographics into Google Ads, into Facebook Business Manager for campaigns, into LinkedIn campaigns, and all of these other things. But once we get to that point, now we're getting serious, especially when it comes to larger campaigns. Like LinkedIn, for example, your minimum buy-in, generally speaking, on LinkedIn to get any kind of return is like $3,000 to $5,000 a month in ad spend just to get your foot in the game or foot in the door. Did I just mix things up there? So once you get to that point where you're about to consider some more serious investments in ad spend and that kind of thing, you want to take that shotgun range of that wide blast area of who you're targeting. You want to refine that down to as much of a laser focus as possible, so that you're getting the most for any ad spend that you're putting out. So this is sort of this sample mindset for target profiling is a creative storytelling part of our process. And what this does is it allows us to really get a sense of who the individual person is. Why do we need to do that? None of our clients, patients, customers, whatever the case is for you, none of them live in a box that ends where you end interacting with them. Okay, they have very broad and developed lives, and it's important to see. It's important to understand your target demographic for who they are and for where they intersect with other people and their other interests and behaviors are. Because when you get to a marketing standpoint and you start building campaigns, you don't just want to be speaking at them about the thing that you interact with them for. If you are, an adventure company, you don't only want to talk about things that pertain to your adventure tour. You want to project to your ideal target market that you are an expert, or at least pretty well versed in a wide variety of things that they care about. Because the whole point of marketing to people is to get people to engage with you, engage with you, and then eventually convert, of course. So if you want somebody to engage with you and you're an adventure, thing, what other sort of peripheral interests does your audience have? When you start to build out these stories, you start to understand that there's crossover maybe in, mindfulness and, holistic medicine, or, whatever. You start to discover, and you build out a story, and you start to discover your target demographic as a whole and complete person outside of their interaction with you. And once you get to that point, you're able to establish yourself as a leader of reference in your industry for them. But you're also able to earn their trust, earn them coming back and actually reading your email broadcasts, actually coming back and engaging with your social posts, whatever it is, because you're showing that you care about them, not just with regards to what it is that you're doing with them, but beyond that, as an individual person. So this example here, we generally try to make 3 to 4, maybe more in some cases, sample mindsets that are very different, because you're going to, typically you're going to have, a variety of different ideal target demographics that you want to be able to invest in and target directly to. So in this case, we build a story, and we just talk about David, 67 years old, married with 1 child, 2 grandchildren. As we go through this sort of anecdotal sort of narrative idea of who David is, we really start to absorb and learn who these people are, outside of our interaction with them. And once we start to do that, and we start building creative campaigns, and and not even just creative campaigns, but also product development. After going through an exercise like this, I highly recommend auditing whatever your product focus is, because you might go through this kind of an exercise, and I really wanted to approach this business in this way, and I want to offer this, and this is what I want to do, but this information is kind of leading me in a different direction, and this is what people are actually looking for and what they're asking for. If I just tweak this a little bit, maybe I took this component out of it, added this component in, the sort of nudge or the tipping point to get somebody from engaging with you in an uncertain way, and pulling the trigger on actually working with you. A lot of those things are just a minor tweak away, and I think I really do feel like putting together these kinds of target profiles are a great way to fill that gap. And as the types of business professionals that you are, you all know with absolute certainty that every little bit of effort helps. It's a numbers game. You got to put every little bit of effort to get a competitive advantage, and to try and make things work. That small little tweak could mean the difference between a 2x return and a 10x return on your investment. So here we have a few other examples of different mindsets. So we have a 67-year-old man. We have a 53-year-old woman with no children working full time. We start to understand what that world might look like, right? We have different annual incomes, living in different areas, different cultural backgrounds. Anything that we feel is sort of appropriate and relevant to sorry, excuse me, to that targeting exercise. So that is the main outline of our process for that type of thing. Talked a little bit about the initial reasoning and how we go about that with clients. We just explain very clearly, this is a very critical foundational component of your marketing. You wouldn't take off on family vacation without knowing where you were going or where you wanted to go. And the purpose of that trip in general. I mean, there are a number of different reasons for taking a trip. You could be taking a business trip. You might want to go on a cultural trip where you're learning about different cultures. You might just want to sit on a beach with a drink and relax. It might be a restorative trip. So, it's the same thing with identifying your ideal target market. What is it that you're trying to achieve? Most clients that I engage with on the front end have a marketing need. They've approached us for a marketing need, but there's this interesting thing that happens when I'm just networking with people. I'm talking to people. They haven't specifically reached out to me for marketing. And they say, oh, you're in marketing. Oh, you do this, this, and this. Great. Well, I don't need marketing because we're super busy. Awesome. That's great. I'm glad you're busy. The very next question I ask them is, what are you busy with? Because oftentimes they maybe have 5, 10, 15% of their customers or their clients are ideal clients who take minimal time, are profitable, are highly profitable. They're long-term clients, they're loyal, they're all of these different things. Like, what does your ideal client look like? Surely in most cases, they're low maintenance. They get you, they let you do their job without nitpicking things. They pay their bills on time, they're profitable. Outline what that ideal client looks like. Because you can be busy, you can be incredibly busy and have, say, 80% of your client base taking up a tremendous amount of your time, a tremendous amount of resources. They need a lot of hand-holding, like all this other kind of stuff. And it's not always about that. Sometimes, maybe your ideal client has nothing to do with money. I've had clients like that before where their primary goal was not to increase their revenue. Their primary goal was to solidify their legacy as their reputation and their name in an industry. So it's important to understand what your goal is to begin with, and what your, if you have clients, what their goals are. So once you understand that, sorry, I'm blanking for a second. Give me just a second to bring it back around.
I'm actually, Brad.
Yeah,
really,
jump in, please.
If you don't mind, I'm really glad that you brought that point up, because it always starts with, what are we trying to achieve?
Yep.
And I have found myself that there's often a misunderstanding or even a discrepancy between what the client thinks they want and what you think you're doing. And so having absolute clarity about it, and then even challenging the client on and that's basically what I heard you just say, is that actually the right thing for them?
Yeah.
And being able to weigh in on that with them as well, so that you're absolutely sure before you spend your time and energy, before they start paying you, before any of that stuff happens, that clear end goal is shared.
Yeah. What does success look like? It's different for everybody.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that's critical. I mean, we've certainly turned away potential client relationships because we couldn't connect on that. And as far as we're concerned, being a marketing agency, I'm speaking from my own viewpoint and perspective, but being a marketing agency, we rely very heavily on our reputation, and I've spent a lot of money, taken a lot of hits, and gone the extra mile in a lot of areas where I really didn't have to, where something was maybe a client's error and I make up the difference. And so we protect our reputation vigilantly. And so if we notice right out of the gates that we can't get on the same page with, what does success look like to you? How are we going to get there? Then it's on us. It's our responsibility to back out of the relationship before, basically as soon as possible. If we get to a point where, our vision of success for somebody is very different than their success, and we think we knocked it out of the park, and they think we dropped the ball, it's a very problematic position to be in.
Absolutely. Great. We're going to continue the conversation, but any other last little pieces?
I noticed that there were some comments coming in the chat. I'm not sure, I haven't had a chance to see them, but does anybody have any thoughts on the ethos behind that, the process that we take, or anything along those lines?
I'll start quickly by just saying thank you and great. I love the tip that you shared with us about using realtor.com as a potential resource for demographics. That's a great shortcut, really, really smart little trick. And of course, that research there's been good investment in that research already. So yeah.
Can I point, there's another, I'm a big fan of, again, like coming from the music world, independent music world, you have to be clever and crafty and, use a lot of guerrilla tactics and that kind of thing. And so I really feel like my background, being a poor musician, I value that background so much now. One of the other sort of exercises that I go through myself, and that I tell people that is really interesting to go through, is learn about what your own demographic is. Who are you? And one of the really interesting exercises that you can go through is taking a look at, right? So if for example, if I'm watching TV and I see a bunch of commercials for payday loans and, get yourself out of this bad situation and all this other kind of stuff, I got to go, okay, this company has invested a tremendous amount of money in creating this commercial, paying a tremendous amount of money for broadcast, because that is not cheap to do. People aren't just going to throw money at something like that. They need to understand that the people who are watching this particular show are our demographic. So if I'm getting a whole bunch of things that are unsavory, that are painting a picture of an unsavory audience, I need to think to myself, maybe I need to watch a different show. Maybe this isn't the lifestyle that I want to be perpetuating for myself through the media that I absorb, because this is a story now that I'm telling myself I'm a part of this demographic. And that's something that happens sort of subconsciously. So that's a really interesting demographic or exercise to run through to see what your own demographic looks like.
Yeah. You know what, Brad, that's a brilliant deconstruction of the way that media is used to influence us, and being able to take a reverse view. I think that's really smart. Thank you for sharing that. It's really, really good.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Laura asked a question in the chat about how would this process apply to B2B, also when your clients are all around the world. So
I love it.
Right.
So great question. I have a little bit of a controversial view on B2B versus B2C. So my view on this, which I know not everybody necessarily believes in, I believe that the separation of consumer targeting versus business targeting is a myth, because the people who are in business, who are making buying decisions, are people. They are people who are engaging with media in the same places that they engage with media for their own personal needs. So, the approach, can be maybe slightly different in tone and messaging and that kind of thing. Maybe in platform as well. I mean, certainly LinkedIn is a business to business platform versus Facebook and Instagram and that kind of thing, which is business to consumer primarily. But it's the same thing with marketing in general. We talk about all these different tools that people use, whether it's social media. Like social media is relative, it's been around for a long time now, but it's a pretty new tool. And there's going to be another new tool 5 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever that is. But the foundation of marketing specifically, it is and has always been about the study of human behavior. How do people engage with things? What are their wants? What are their needs? What are their behaviors? And what we're doing with that is we're trying to take somebody who, either doesn't know about something or knows very little about something in particular. We're trying to educate them. We're trying to get them interested in whatever that thing is, and we're trying to move them towards making a decision to do something about it. That's the foundation of marketing in general. And those principles are exactly the same whether you're targeting a consumer or a business. I hope that's what you mean, and I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome.
Yeah, Brad, thank you for that answer.
Yeah.
There's no question that you're absolutely dealing with humans, and we talk about this idea in terms of what is the pain point. Sometimes people are making decisions to keep their job, to stay safe. Sometimes people are making decisions, to advance themselves personally, whatever that happens to be. Sorry, yeah. I've got a little
hey, buddy.
I got a little company here.
Awesome.
Does anyone else have any questions for Brad, or should we start sharing some of our own strategies and tools?
Yeah.
My son is going to his grandmother's now. I'm sure you all needed to know that.
That's awesome.
So any other tricks and tips? Does anyone want to throw a few out there? Talk about a little bit of your own strategies.
And again, feel free to challenge me on anything that I just talked about. Yeah. I would love to have, an open, constructive conversation about your process, what you think is right, things that, I work through that maybe don't sit well with you, or any of that kind of stuff. Let's hash it out.
Yeah, Brad, I got a couple comments. If I can jump.
Please.
I'm always fascinated with the demographic talk and the conversation and the ability to break it down. So in your presentation there, you got so specific and create a story around it. I just got to applaud that, because I find that to be impossible to do. Like, I don't know how to get to that point. I'm in real estate, so when I think of what's my ideal demographic, I struggle immensely with that, because there's so many types of buyers and clients, and I end up kind of leaning more to someone like, who am I? I like how you talked about that, but kind of more geographical spaces.
Sure.
What's convenient for me, and then whoever's in that space, I'll be able to identify like the socioeconomic side of things, but there'll be such a variety in terms of age and so
Yep.
and different demographics. So I struggle with doing that because I get asked all the time, like, who's your ideal client? And I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
Technically, like it can be almost anyone, and that's what's exciting. But oftentimes it can be almost overwhelming when you try to really break it down. So any advice you have for kind of the real estate space? I love the realtor.com play.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
great.
I do actually. I love that. And that's, you know what, I should have gone over this initially as well. This is something I talk to people. So this is why it's great because, you're bringing up things that, I do talk about all the time with people. I hear that all the time. My target demographic is pretty much just about anyone. You're right. Your target demographic may be just about anyone who can buy a house, but it's important. We're making the distinction of what your ideal target market is, or your ideal target demographic, and that's a very specific thing. So, the exercise I would suggest to you to do is look through your years of experience and your years of deals and interactions with people, and just pick a handful of people that really knocked it out of the park for you, that were really great clients that, certainly in real estate, there's that horror story of the client who, sees 500 places and then, doesn't end up working with you in the end, or something crazy like that. Right. So, obviously the other side of that where, somebody trusts you to do your job, and, you build out the parameters of what that looks like, but think of like that actual person or the couple or the family or whatever it was, or the business that you worked with that, you finished that deal and you went, man, that was great. Start to finish. That was awesome. And then draw an outline of who they were. Like literally just say like they were at this age demographic, they had this much income, they were looking to invest, this kind of thing. These are the interests and behaviors that they had. Because all you're trying to do now is you want to replicate that. You want as many of your deals to be with that type of person as you possibly can. So figure out who those people were, and then figure out how they engage with media, where they engage with media, what their interests are, and then just market to that exact person. And you will get people on the outside of that. You'll get peripheral people who that will speak to as well. You're not pigeonholing yourself by any stretch of the imagination, but you're just setting yourself up for that best case scenario.
Okay.
We've
Yeah,
got
'cause
another.
I have a situation that I'll explain, and this is
Yeah.
where I get thrown off. And Perry and everyone knows how I see real estate as a vehicle to do so much more than serve a client and transaction. But at one point, I'm literally 2 weeks ago, I'm closing a deal for almost $3 million, and at the same time, I'm closing a deal for a kid that has taken on a responsibility for his child, has been on the street for the last 6 years at a very low price point. And to me, they're almost the exact same. There's no emotional
Yeah.
based off property. It's the ability to serve that individual. So that's where when I see those two, like they're almost the same client because of the feeling I get by serving their need in that moment. It's not necessarily the price point. And so many realtors are define themselves by price point, right?
Yep.
So that's where I struggle, but I like to think beyond just the deal itself and what access this industry can give. And that's where I start to kind of formulate an ideal demographic or ideal client, which are the businesses and partners of the community.
So I heard you say that that they're the same, and I'm interpreting that as they're the same to you in that you get some level of fulfillment and value from each of them, even though they're so dramatically different as far as where they're at when they come to you.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest is that those are two very different but very ideal demographics for you, right? So they are obviously going to have completely different behaviors, completely different interests. They're going to interact with media very differently. So if those are two really great situations where, they fulfill you, the one certainly helps your bank account and helps keep the business going. There are a multitude of different things that are going to, make a client worthwhile and satisfying for you. It's not just money. It's going to be a number of different things. So you're going to have a wide range of different types of clients that are going to be wonderful to interact with. But paint those different pictures, of who they are, and then approach them differently when you target them. Perry?
I just want to chime in here because Tim, the way you describe this, I think is really important. One of the things that you can also look for, and we've had this conversation in terms of the mastermind groups as well, is what is that common denominator? In other words, what do they share? And maybe they're going through a particular transition in their life, or they're going through a particular moment in their life where they're coming at it from a different place. You know, someone's well established and has money, someone isn't and doesn't, but they're still going through a similar type of situation. And so that common denominator is what brings you into, I mean, if you think of this just in plain terminology, you'd say, what's the pain point? But it's an important link, and it's an important way to start to recognize similarities.
Yeah. And if you have a finite amount of resources, whether that's ad spend or time and effort and all that kind of stuff to actively campaign and target people, yeah, I talk about that all the time. Figure out who your ideal target demographics are, but then figure out all of the commonalities between them. And then wherever there are the most commonalities, there's, wherever there's a commonality that sort of touches the most people, or crosses over to the most people, that's your, this is used in a negative way often, but that's your low hanging fruit. That's your easy pick, put all your eggs in that basket. That's your campaign, because you're going to reach the most the highest number of people in your ideal target demographic with that.
So let's go to a question from Micah. Micah, your question here is, what's the recipe? What's your recipe for dealing with clients that don't know what they want?
That's a great question. I would say that very nearly every single client doesn't know what they want. And I kind of appreciate that. It's hard because a lot of the businesses that like our sweet spot is in that SME category, so a lot of them wear a lot of different hats and that kind of thing. But yeah, I always, the very first thing that I do is I empathize. I always empathize with my client. And I genuinely do. Like, it's not a tactic. It's not anything like that. Like, the way I describe things is, I'm not better than you at understanding your business. I'm just not deeply embedded in 100 emails every day and all this other kind of stuff. I can come in and have a 40,000 foot view. It's nearly impossible for you to do that because you're getting blasted every day with the minutia and the bills and the accounting and the this and all this other kind of stuff. Like I have this luxury of being free from that and coming in and being able to see things with fresh eyes. So just I empathize and I say, just, you know what, the best way that this relationship is going to work out is if you leverage me as a tool. And I'm going to leverage you right back for your experience and knowledge in your industry, because that's the only way I'm going to be successful. It's a partnership every single time. And so again, most people don't really know what they're doing. And the first thing I do is say, well, you know what, if you put me, like if, we have dental clients, that's a niche that we're sort of diving into. I say, like, if you put me in a clinic with a patient and, put the tools in my hand, I'm going to freak out, because that's not my world. I don't know that. And, marketing you shouldn't be expected to be a marketing professional and all this stuff, but I am. Let's establish credibility, establish trust. You came to me for a reason. And I feel like a really good way to build confidence with my clients as well is to say, I'm going to tell you what's best, period. That's my job. It's your job to then make a decision based off that information. If you decide against what my recommendation is, that's fine. We'll try and work through it. But if that becomes a pattern, then this isn't a good fit and we need to go in different directions. So that's how I approach that. 98 times out of 100, it's great. People get it. I'm able to build that trust. Every once in a while, I need to be the adult and pull out of the relationship first. If a client gets to a point where they don't have that trust in me and they need to pull out of something and I haven't done it first, that's when I feel like I've failed my client, or I've failed that person. So I take that responsibility very seriously. Does that answer your question, Micah?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. Good.
So Christina, you mentioned in the chat dealing with the gap between what's possible and capacity. That's a big one, and that's a big deal, and it happens a lot. Do you want to elaborate on that question, or do you want who are you asking it of, in general or of Brad?
Brad, hi everyone. So good to see all of you and some new faces. And thank you, Brad. So here's the thing. I could use 10 hours a day of my time to just do marketing at all those levels, from profiling my ideal clients to dissecting me, which that was an awesome insight, because that explains in a way why I'm being chased in the rooms where I go to chase, right?
Yeah.
But the truth is, I don't have 10 hours a day on marketing, and I know I should. I know that is vital to the long-term sustainability of my business and for revenue 2 years down the road. And it's frankly exhausting, and also the paralysis of choice. It increases because my ability to measure return on so much marketing is actually quite haphazard. I mean, A/B testing and all that kind of stuff and analytics and all that being what they are, I still cannot tell exactly what does what. And when people say yes, why do they say yes? They say yes because of this, but we know that that's not necessarily the case. So if it is to be really tactical and say, man, I only have capacity for 3 hours of marketing a week, where is the best place to put that? Thinking long term, thinking of the big vision, thinking of what's possible, right?
Mm-hmm. That's a great question. That's a position that I feel like most business owners find themselves in. You know, it's a very, very common thing. Can I ask what your business is?
Yes, I have a strategy consulting firm.
Okay. So what
the social sector.
Okay.
I basically solve problems or help people make plans from where they are to where they want to go. And sometimes the first part of the plan is helping them figure out what they actually want.
Yeah. So what I would suggest is, I mean, first of all, you know, the first thing to do is just to empathize with yourself, you know, give yourself a break. Again, being in a small business, I'm sorry, I'm making an assumption, but being in a small business, you have to wear a whole bunch of different hats that you know, frankly, you're not qualified to do, but you're doing because you love this entity that you're building, and you're trying to make it successful, and you're doing everything that you can for it. You know, there are actually I'm gonna after this, I'm gonna see if I can pull up. I used to give a talk called "Don't Hire a Marketing Agency." You know, and it was a bit of a strange thing for the owner of a marketing agency to give this talk about, you know, don't hire me. This is bad. This is a bad idea for you. And I sort of went through. It was a while ago, but I have a presentation on hand somewhere. I'll see if I can pull it up. But I went through all of these little tips and tricks of things that you can do on your own. You know, little, like I said, guerrilla tactics, little kind of hacks and tips and tricks and that kind of stuff. The biggest thing that I would suggest is make the most of your network, make the most of your personal relationships, because it's much easier to turn somebody into an ambassador for your business if they already know you and they already love you. You know, a lot of what marketing does is you're trying to establish that from 0 to 60. You know, you're trying to reach out in a digital way and get people to love you, become an ambassador for you, and speak very highly of what you do. That's a hard road. That's some heavy lifting that you need to do. It takes resources and strategy and planning and time. But your friends, your family, your clients, you know, they already love you. You know, so you know the most cost-effective and direct way to get a return on any kind of efforts is to leverage those relationships. But make sure when you do that, that you know, not only do you know who your ideal client is, like, you know exactly who you're trying to get to contact you, but you're able to explain it in a very succinct and simple way to the people in your network, so it's not a game of telephone and they lose the message partway along the way, right? If you're at a networking event, like, you know, people talk about elevator pitch and you know, all that kind of stuff. It's not important for an elevator pitch isn't important for you to be able to get your business across, your business needs and what you're looking for across to somebody else. It's the next step. it's got to be so good, so tight, so memorable that that person is able to relay it to other people going forward. And then you have an ambassador, you have other people working for you. Beyond that, find one platform, one marketing platform, not that is easy for you, but that is the most used by who you feel is your target market. So it's not about us. You know, we're trying to catch flies with honey. Okay. And if I like vodka and I don't like, you know, the vodka is not going to help me with the bees. You know, I need to understand where my target demographic is, what they like, how they engage with things. Pick one platform. Don't overwhelm yourself. People think, well, if I'm going to be seen as a legitimate business, I need a LinkedIn, I need a Twitter, I need an Instagram, I need you know, all these different things. You don't. Having a whole huge roster of all these different tools that are not being leveraged in an effective way is distracting. It's time consuming. It's taking you away from what you're good at. Find one thing where the most of your audience is, and just try to do the best you can with that.
Brad, in that explanation, you connected a dot for me that I've been thinking about for a little while. When you're talking about the people who are your greatest champions, you know, those ambassadors. One of the things that I always find really interesting is first of all, most of my referrals come from people that I know like that. That's where most of my business comes from personally. And they usually come from the same people. So even though I know a lot of people and there's a lot of people that I think are potential referrers, it's only a handful that actually do it consistently. So those are the ones to focus on. And then, but the penny that dropped for me as you were explaining what you were talking about, and it connected the dot for something you said earlier about, you know, how much time do clients take? There's a couple, and I have one in mind in particular right now, a couple of people who refer me constantly to horrible clients. And and it's a real problem. And it's not the only one, but I often get referrals that are not appropriate from people who think they're doing me a favor.
Yep.
And that is taking up time and energy. That is taking up valuable capacity that I have, that I need to focus in on the people who are right. And so not only, the click for me just now was I spend time making sure that the people who send me good people are being looked after and I'm paying attention to them and they know what to say the right way, but I'm not spending time with the people who are sending me the wrong people.
Yeah.
And
that's
it's
a great thing to address.
Causing me trouble. It's using up my energy, and a little bit of investment there, or even just turning the tap off, saying, please stop, one or the other.
Yeah.
Would probably be really
and I mean, it could be just as much effort to say, please stop, as it is to, you know,
turn it around,
figure out a way to say, you know, here's a memorable way for you to understand the types of people that I actually need to work with. If you come across these people, maybe you don't come across these people, and that's fine. If you come across these people, great. If you come across these other people, you know, I've learned, you know, through working with you and through your generosity, that I'm unable to help these people in the way that they need or that works for me. And I appreciate the heck out of you, but yeah.
The other thing that I thought of is, and it's very similar, it's really just a different version of the same thing, is for whatever the reasons are, algorithms or otherwise, often people find something about you and it's not always the thing you want them to find. So when you were talking about reversing the stream on the media you're consuming and saying, oh, this is how other people see me. I just want to point out, are you aware of what people are seeing about you? And have you done that? And I mean, it can be as simple as a Google search, but sometimes you need to go a little bit deeper.
You know, we kind of touched on, I'm going to forget the guy's name now. We kind of touched on this. You and I had a call not too long ago, and we kind of touched on this idea. Life is so much more infinitely complicated than any of us can even imagine. Infinitely more complicated, and our brains are brilliant because they don't have the capacity to understand the depth and detail of how complicated things are. But what it does do is it does a really great job of filling in the gaps a little bit to make it palatable and digestible for us. So kind of in the same way, I don't know if anybody's seen, somebody puts up a post or something and every other word is or every other letter is missing in a paragraph, but you could still read that paragraph perfectly fine. That's something that our brain does with life in general. We make up these stories to see this picture, this more complete picture of who people are and all this other kind of stuff. It's way more complicated than that. And surely, the idea that we have about who this person is or who this group of people is nowhere near correct, but it's as close as we can get to sort of reconcile with, how we interact with people and how we're going to work together and how we're going to make people happy and all these other things. So, you want to do the best you can to represent yourself as well as you can, but you also have to let go a little bit. You can get really lost in a rabbit hole there. And one thing that we talk about with our clients very regularly is, I'm not the best designer. I don't produce the best design work. I don't produce the best content, the best this, the best that. I get as close to your point of diminishing returns on your investment as I possibly can. I could spend another 5 weeks on your logo. Is the difference in that 5 weeks going to bring you a return? Probably not. I would love to spend 5 more weeks on that logo. I'm a designer. I take a lot of pride in the work that I do, but it's not about me. I could spend an infinite amount of time on design work or content creation or any of the stuff that I do. But our focus is not on being the best at the things that we do. Our focus is on bringing the best possible return that we can for the investment from our clients. And I hope that I get that across. It might not come across to everybody, but some people might find us for different reasons, and we'll take what we can get and see if we can make a mutually beneficial relationship from there.
Cool. So I want to make sure we have some time to, through these questions, we're already into it, but that you all have an opportunity to put something on the table if you want to get some feedback, or as mentioned earlier, if you want to share some of your tips or tricks or insights about it. Now's the time, so feel free. We've already got a little bit of that insight. Does anyone want to workshop a particular situation they have, get some roundtable feedback on it? Nope. Yep. Ali, great. Hi.
Hi.
Okay.
I'm kind of burnt out on where I think I need to market, which is Instagram. Being an interior designer, that's the key, and I don't feel like doing anything. Is this seriously? It's probably because I'm by the lake right now, but it's been slowly happening for a while, and I've just noticed it. And that passion just to market myself or even have a camera in my hand. Normally I would have taken 100 pictures by now. I would have zoomed in on color palettes that I would use later, all this stuff. I've done none of that. I don't feel like it. And I'm just giving myself a bit of a break, hoping that's okay. And I hope it comes back. So when you're in that situation, and right now I have a couple of really great projects that I could be marketing, and I think it would help propel some future work, which I'm a little concerned about. I've hired new staff. I have to somehow get on board with this. Is this the time to hire somebody outside to do this?
Is that addressed to me? I don't want to just take over. I know we're
yeah, Brad or whoever. I'm all ears.
Why don't you start, Brad? Why don't you start us off?
Okay. Sorry, I'm new. I don't know the format, so I want to make sure I'm not stepping on any toes or anything. Yeah. First of all, again, give yourself a break. I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday, about how the transition, specifically, and this isn't a conversation about gender, it's more a conversation about economics, but this transition from having women not in the workplace and then having women introduced into the workplace and be career driven and all this other kind of stuff, from a high sort of a government GDP level. The countries who went through that transition, like Canada and the US and that kind of thing, from a GDP standpoint, they're raising their hands in the air and cheering because GDP goes through the roof, because all of a sudden you've got twice the workforce, So you've got, all of this, this economy is just like churning like crazy because you've just got this injection of talent and ability and time. But then what happens is that raises the bar for everything. So now things start to get expensive, and if you want to get by, it's not a choice anymore. Like you have to, as a partnership, as a marriage, you have to have, more often than not, you have to have both people working, and then all of a sudden it's not just that both people are working. It's like, okay, well, both of us need to be working, but one of us needs to have two jobs and has to hustle and has to be working 15 hours a day. And then both of us, and, all this other kind of stuff. And there's this snowball effect that's been happening for the last, 50, 60 years. And it's overwhelming, and it's set this precedent for the hustle, and the nobility of the hustle, which I can't stand now. Like I everybody that I can get my hands on or get their ear, it's like, let's not glorify that anymore. Let's start to take a step back and find balance. I think what you're doing right now is extremely healthy and extremely necessary. And then you have to make, figure out what works for you from there. Is it worthwhile to hire somebody, maybe even just on a contract basis? Because if you hire a contractor, you don't have, that's not adding to your monthly burn, right? That's only coming in handy when you need it. I'm a huge proponent of hiring contract work, but it's okay to take a breath. There's a lot to it, because it really, if you are the core of your business, if you had a machine, or a vehicle, you were a transporter or something like that, and your truck started having all these problems, and it stopped working, and the parts were wearing down, and all this other kind of stuff, you'd say, shit, I need to fix this truck. That would be the very first thing that you would do. And we never really think about that with us, but we're the truck, we're the thing keeping this business going. We need to be okay, and we need to be thriving. Is it time to hire somebody? Maybe on a contract basis. Maybe you have resources right now that aren't being optimized that you could use. Maybe you have existing employees or contacts or family or friends that can help you with that kind of thing, just to get you through. Do your best to optimize the resources that you have right now. Absolutely give yourself a break. Burnout is real. We need to stop, making this hero complex about the hustle and all this other kind of stuff. It's not the people who hustle. It's the people who've built a smart and smoothly operating machine, who are doing the thing. That's the goal.
So Christina's made a suggestion in the chat in terms of being able to outsource some of the implementation, which I think, Ali, in your case, makes a lot of sense. And Brad used the word vehicle. We talk a lot about vehicles as a concept in this group, meaning that this is a marketing vehicle, is something that someone else can drive. It doesn't just have to be you all the time. Mm-hmm. So yep. as you say, I mean, whether that's employees or people who are part of the project, all of us are encouraging each other all the time to create vehicles that help drive our business forward, that involve other people in a passionate way, give them a place to harness their passion. So in Ali's case, Ali created this amazing project called Designing Back, which, Ali, I don't know if you want to explain it. Do you want to explain it, or do you want me to just give you a quick idea? But basically the idea is, as a luxury designer, she is always looking to find ways to contribute to her community, because that's important to her, and that's become part of the culture of the organization, and to the point now where she invites her clients to participate as well. So listen, as we do this project, how can we use your resources that you don't need anymore in such a way that this can make a difference and impact the community? Tim has a project that he's alluded to earlier before, Homes for Good. So a lot of us are engaged in these types of activities. These are vehicles. These have other people involved. Therefore, someone else can help carry the weight a little bit.
I love that. I love that so much. We do the same thing. We have a primary initiative. We have several, but our main one is called 5 Days for Good. And we talk to our clients about all the time. One of the first things that we ask our clients in our initial discovery meeting is, what are you doing to make the world a better place? And if they come back and they say, we're not doing anything, then we say, okay, well, what can we do to change that? And if they say, oh, we're not really interested in that right now, and then I just say, we're not a good fit. And if they say, well, I don't know what to do, can you guide us? Then it's like, great, let's get started. I think that's beautiful. And
it brings us
and
full circle back to our, ideal client, right? Are we talking about success, the same thing here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Sorry,
ask them for help. Sorry, like Perry said, leverage those resources. One of the greatest things that you can do to make somebody feel valuable and feel good about themselves is ask them for help. One of the best ways that you can heighten the level of engagement with a client or with a friend or anybody is to ask them for help. If I were to, on this call right now, or to say, this is a great call, Allison, I could really use your help right now, with XYZ. Immediately you're going to feel, oh, I feel great. I feel like this person really thinks I'm something, so that effect is going to happen with the people that you're reaching out to. So if you have friends and network resources, clients that you can leverage and get them to engage a little bit more, and that takes a little bit off you, it's a win-win.
Mm-hmm. Jason, I know that you have a lot to offer. Is there anything that you want to suggest or share with us?
I think one of the most important things that I found out over the past year, and Perry, you guys helped me discover it, is that the best way to attract clients is also to use whatever you're really good at. And for my sake, it's been conversation. It's been being able to have those conversations, dig through the conversations. I'm kind of just like one of those people who's real good at kind of just digging into the conversation and pulling out knowledge that we might not have had before. One thing that's been very strong for me has been podcasts. Just being a guest on a couple of podcasts and literally sending people those podcasts to say, if you want an example of the way that I think, here's what I do. Probably the most important one that I did was the one for during the civil unrest last year when I first started doing all of the diversity, equity, and inclusion work. And when that European blog contacted me about like, hey, how's the financial market, with everything that's happening? And, he didn't know. It was a guy who was very, unique to it. And I said, well, why don't we talk about the commoditization of slavery and how that is, systemic injustice has put Black people at, at a disadvantage. And it was like, oh, and we were able to talk through this conversation where I literally taught him about systemic racism in the US. And that's what's helped me to get most of my clients to like, okay, that's a very unique perspective. Or, the one with the DLC Drop podcast talking about creativity and really driving creative teams and stuff. So I think that's, when we talked last week, or a couple of weeks ago, our project that we were talking about was vehicles. And I had brought that up that, we could, if you find what you're really good at and then somehow can figure out a method to translate that, then that's going to be very strong.
Yeah, 100%. Kevin.
Yeah, I love the question that you said, how do you make the world a better place? What are you doing to make the world a better place? And I wrote that down and wrote a note to myself that should be one of the qualifying questions that I ask for some of the people that I'm dealing with. And Jason and I have been in the same world for a long time in sports marketing and tourism. And I feel, and I put some thought to this morning, that my clients are, and I use the like a journey as a way. I've got clients that are trying to plan their journey. And so some of them are just, they don't know exactly what they want to do, but they know they want to be into sports tourism. And a lot of them are destinations or cities or municipalities. And some of them have started their journey, but then something gets in the way and they need to refigure where they're going to go, remap themselves. And then I've got some clients that are been in this business for a very long time. They've been on this journey for a very long time, and they've had some success, but they're at the point of they need to find a new port. And so as I kind of thought through that, it's like, okay, which one is the ideal client for me? Because I come into it with, if you're just starting off, I'm finding that you give them an enormous amount of information and they look at you and it's like you're coming at them with a car and they're not quite sure what to do. And I'm finding that some of my better clients are the ones who've been doing this for a long time. They've had a lot of success in the same place. But it's like I used to say when I did it, it's like, what kind of rabbit am I going to pull out of the friggin' hat this year to keep these people happy? And so I think that's probably what I would be looking at as an ideal client. And Jason, you may have some more input on that because you've dealt with a lot of the same people.
No, I concur with that 100%. So yeah,
Well,
it kind of goes back to the, what people think that they want to do or what they want is always going to be different than what the reality ends up being.
Mm-hmm.
It's important to understand too that you're very likely not just going to have one ideal client type. You're probably going to have a multitude of different types that really work for you. And the, talking about the client that comes in and doesn't have any idea, what direction or what journey they're going to go on. That's where, the early teachings of Simon Sinek come into play, where, I have the why conversation with my clients to say, the simplest question to leverage for that is to say, what aspect of your business would you continue doing if you stop getting paid for it? What's that important to you that you're going to invest your time in it and you don't care if you get paid? You could go 5 years and not make any money at that one thing. That's your driver, because running a business is incredibly difficult. It's a soul searching, a gritty thing to do. And there's a lot of, for most of us, there's a lot of really dark times. I had, through the pandemic, I had 8 months out of a 12-month calendar year where I was working 60 hours a week and I didn't pay myself a dime, just to keep my employees payroll funded, but I love what we do and I love what we've built, and it's more than that to me. And now the business is turned around and it's serving me, it's doing what it needs to do for me. Shoot, Jason, you had said something earlier as well that I loved. What was it that you were talking about again, if you don't mind? It just slipped my mind. I apologize.
Which part was earlier? Trying to think about like just the vehicles of being able to market yourself with. I'm trying to think of what I said. You know what? You were talking to a client, and you really confidently put yourself in, like your whole self, into that relationship. When you were talking about inequities and how it affects finance and economies and all those kinds of things. So we're here talking about ideal client demographics, but Jason, you hit on such a beautiful component of that, is that it's not just about who your ideal client is, but are you able to do the apex, the perfection of marrying up an ideal client with the most authentic version of yourself possible, and the things that really matter to you and that really drive you home. That is like another world of like accomplishment if you can do that. And I think that should be something that we're all striving for. Like, who are the people that we want to be working with, and who am I when I'm working with them? Who is the me that I want to be, and what do I want to talk about? What is the change I want to make in the world? Is that happening when I'm working with these people? If we can bring those two things together, damn it, that's magical. I love that, Jason. There's something that's really important with that, is that it's not necessarily just that everything aligns with that, but it's on selling them on the story. Like, anytime when you're talking to a client or you're presenting or anything like that, it shouldn't be a presentation. It shouldn't be a slideshow. It shouldn't be this. It should be a story that you're telling and walking them through it.
Yeah.
And that with that particular instance, the discovery call was just that, hey, I heard you're doing DEI stuff from a colleague of yours who works in finance, and he said I should talk to you. And it went from, okay, well, let's go down the rabbit hole as deep as it goes in these 15 minutes. And let me tell you what the real story is about. And it turned into a great podcast just because of going out on the limb to really tell a story, rather than say, okay, well, let me answer what you are asking me. Let me just throw some facts and figures, things like that. It wasn't that. Yeah. The whole conversation was just, it was great. It was a great story, and he was totally entrenched in it because of it. So I think that's a super important thing for us to do.
What I hear you guys talking about, and sorry, go ahead, Tim.
I love what you guys are saying and being your authentic self. And Allie, I know we were chatting last week, but I thought I'd just put something in there with being overwhelmed with content. Maybe focus on what you care about through this initiative and start storytelling around that component and create content around that, because it might just be very authentic to your message and your story. And then the consumer or your clients will start coming back. Because that's my situation. I never promote, I don't authentically feel myself when I'm trying to talk about real estate and the criteria home. And I feel like I don't have to at the same time because of this. Everyone's got a phone, everyone's got realtor.com, everyone has Zillow. They know the criteria and the details of home without me having to tell them. So that's where my whole story is, how can I turn such a transactional space into something transformational? Let's talk about how this home could potentially feed a family for a week and build that relationship and that authentic dialogue, and then fall back into, okay, you need to buy or sell a home. Here's how we can do that. But create that element of trust and respect through something greater than just the deal itself, and kind of work backwards. And because of that, I don't ever want to promote real estate. Like, I really have a hard time talking about new escrows or new closings or new listings. It's about families impacted, lives touched because of the access of an industry. And I think there's a lot that can come from that.
Yeah, 100%, Tim. Let's go to Monique.
Hey everyone. Thanks, Brad, for this great, insightful chat. I'm driving right now in tropical Miami, so apologies for the no
Awesome.
FaceTime. I wanted to say, when you talked about data, I feel like data is something that I need to get better at, you know, kind of like, instead of going away from it, like digging into it. But then when Jason was talking about storytelling, I think figuring out a way to merge that data and that power of storytelling is kind of the sweet sauce that could get us to this next, whatever the big project is. But for me, I like when I present data to my clients as a marketing consultant as well, I like to be disarming, you know, like 20% of new businesses launch with blah, 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 whatever it could be with that. And, you know, I had a hard time understanding that, you know, Bob, and here's how I would tell you it could affect you. And I just would go into a story instead of like, let's look at the analytics and bore you to death. So just something for us to think about, like figure out a way to tell the data in a storytelling manner, like how Tim was just saying about his impact. And that's kind of what I think I'm gonna dig into that, figure out what are the best things that I can relay in a storytelling format related to numbers and their data they have, you know, as it relates to different things they may do, like email newsletters or those pesky Instagram followers and, you know, all that stuff.
The story is what gets the information out there in a palatable and memorable way.
Right.
The statistics that drove that story in the first place, having that as a backup, give credibility to that story, and both of those together combine to drive engagement.
Yeah, that's it. You wrapped it up into a nice little soundbite. And then Allie, one thing I wanted to share with you, it's proven 100% of the time that batching your social media content is painful. It's actually a painful process to devote 2 or 3 hours to just pound out like 3 months of content, little captions, and less being in the moment, which can pull from your creative flow. And what I found for myself and for another client, that she has a PR agency, she just hired somebody to batch content for like 3 months worth, pair it up with nice imagery, and then it's up to her to decide if she's going to use it or not, but it's there. There's something with her tone ready to go when the batteries are running low and you really want to use your creativity in a different way. And then she just gave herself permission to put that part of it in automatic pilot. And I'll share with you later her Instagram, even though it's a different field, but just to give you an idea that it still sounds like her. It sounds like her business. It doesn't, but there are ways that you could reach out to somebody to do like a quarterly, maybe like 3 times a year. I get 2 months of content wrapped up. and then it's done.
That's a good
And
point.
So
Cool.
just a thought.
Thanks, Monique.
Thank you.
You're
Jason, you had
welcome.
a comment from before, and then Christina.
Yeah, I was just going to throw this out there, Moni. When it comes to presenting data, the most important thing is to always give a visual to correlate with that data, and not like a chart, not like something like that, like an actual picture of a human being, and talk about why that matters to those human beings, and then be able to turn around and refer back to, and here's the data that backs it up. So Brad, it's exactly what you had mentioned a second ago, that the data is what backs up what's there, but having that visual and being able to humanize it is so super effective.
Great point, Jason. I agree. And sometimes I get so excited when I'm talking to a potential new client that I tend to overwhelm them with the possibilities, that they could do. So slowing down, an impactful image, a compelling story, and then back it up with the numbers. That's good.
Christina, you put your hand up.
So for whatever this is worth, I'll share very succinctly my system. And I've been using this since 2016, I think. So I realized in some point that I am not Beyonce, flash of insight. And I said, well, nobody really cares what I do in a given day. And whatever I did a month ago is as relevant as I'm doing today. So I'm going to go with what I did. So once the pressure of trying to be in the now has been taken off of all of my social media interactions, I said, okay, so what do I do with that? And I basically created a very, very simple system. I have a file in notes on my phone, and of course on my iPad and on my computer and all that kind of stuff. And every time, and some of you might have actually heard me say this, every time I have an insight, every time I create something for a client that can be universally applicable to another client or to a specific situation, every time I solve a problem that can be quipped, I literally go and write it down or copy and paste from that email I send it to a client into this file in the cloud, the identifying or whatever, making it more universal. And I have literally a file for July, I have a file for June, it's called June 2021 Social Media Insights, and it goes back to 2016. I hire someone to do that batching that Monique mentioned. Every now and then, maybe once every year or whatever, I decide what my social media strategy is, and I do feel that we actually do a fair amount of guessing in all areas of our life, more than we would like to admit. So I just take a guess and I go with crazy. I said, okay, I'm going to post 4 times an hour on Twitter, but I don't care. I have the content anyway. And if people scream, let them scream. If people don't read them, I don't care anyway. So let's try that. And basically, I take that content that has been created this month and it gets used next month, or maybe it gets used 4 months down the road because I push out so much content that my social media guy doesn't know what to do with. I'm not particularly strong in the picture department because my visual sensitivity has so little to do with the work that I do, and also because the work that I do is so abstract and all it is talking heads. So it's not particularly visual, and that's a challenge. But bottom line, I decided this is what we do on Twitter, this is what we do on Instagram, this is what we do on Facebook. Everything is handled through Buffer or Hootsuite or whatever du jour works. Technology, one thing is important. And I literally hire people on Upwork, same guy, and I say, please schedule everything from January 1st to December 31st for the next year with this frequency. Those are the hashtags I want you to use, whatever. So it becomes really automated. I don't really have to ever go on Twitter. And of course, engagement is a separate piece that we might or might not discuss here. that's how I handle that. And I don't know if it's helpful at all. We also do cross postings. We also do, particularly with Twitter, I told my social media guy to post it now and post it 6 months from now, because again, repetition is important. Nobody watches in aggregate, and I'm no Beyonce, so nobody will notice if I post it again. And yes, the caveat is that something might happen externally, like, the Capitol is being stormed and I'm posting on Twitter something on, I don't know what, that has like, what planet are you from? It's like, I'm on a planet where that got written a year ago, okay? So there's that, but it works. And I have no pressure whatsoever to interact with social media or do that myself. Just my system.
Thank you, Christina. I think it's really important, I think, for all of us to hear that you make a decision, you make a commitment, you implement it, and then you let it do its thing. And for a lot of people, that would free up a lot of that capacity that you're talking about, and the burnout, Ali, that you're referring to, and that sort of constant demand. I know I'm just repeating what's already been said, but I think that's an excellent, clearly the right solution for you, and an excellent suggestion for some of us to consider. Whether we outsource it, whether we, however we do it, but just make that decision, get it out of our way. And for others who want to be completely engaged, and I have a client who is constantly on, and that is her strategy. Her strategy is to be constantly on social media, pretty much 20 hours a day. And that's what people expect. That's what they know of. But more poignantly, this is what she loves. So like Jason, we were talking about doing the thing you love and to do the best. If it's storytelling, she loves to talk about herself and show whatever she's doing. She is Beyonce and that's her deal. Then great. And that works, right? And everything else doesn't matter. Because the truth of the matter is, while we're all searching for ideal clients, the single best way is when someone finds us. And I think it was Seth Godin that said, try to be sought, not seek. And unless we're talking about major, scaled operations, which at this particular moment, I don't think there's anyone on the call who's really engaged in, what better place to be than to be just totally authentic, speaking your truth, and people find you because of that, right? That's to be sought.
I love that so much, and I've based a lot of our own sort of business practices on that as well. The sort of peripheral benefit to getting people to seek you out is that you have the credibility and the leverage to be able to guide them in the way that you need to guide them. If you've sold somebody on working with you, you're always selling them on your ideas and your direction, all that stuff. But if they've come to you looking for help, you don't have to sell them. You just say, this is the way we do this. This is how we make your project a success. And that is such a huge gift to have. And that is a big factor in actually making a success of what you're doing with them, is just having their respect and knowing that they're gonna follow through with what the recommendation that you provide.
100%. Having them
That's
buy
great,
in,
Perry.
nothing better, right? You don't want to have to be continually proving yourself.
Yeah.
What a great discussion. Thank you, Brad Dean, and
yeah, happy to be here. What a great group.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll see you around, and they can find you on LinkedIn. They can find you at jetpropelled.com. Is that correct?
Jetpropelled.ca.
.ca. Oops, I'm so sorry.
Yeah,
jetpropelled.ca.
That's okay. And actually, I shared. I mentioned that talk that I gave. Don't hire a marketing agency. So I shared the PDF for that in the chat. If anybody wants to download that, there's just some tips and tricks in there of some things that you can do on your own. Some good foundational areas to focus on. I hope it's helpful. But I think my contact information is in there as well.
Great. Well, I'm going to make sure that everybody gets a copy of the link of the recording. I know there's a lot of members that weren't able to make it today, so they'll be checking it out later. I'll include the presentation in that email that goes around to all of us. And yeah, thank you to everybody for coming today. It's really great to see you again, Brad. Well done. Appreciate it.
Awesome. I appreciate you. Thank you, everybody.
Perry,
It's really great to meet you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad.
The presentation that's in the link or in the chat is the one that you're going to include?
Yeah, I'll put it in the
email.
email.
Awesome.
And if someone can reshare that PDF link, because I don't see it in the chat, I probably joined after that PDF was shared. That would be awesome.
I'll make sure you get it, Christina.
Thank you. And thank you, Brad. That was so awesome and so
Yeah,
useful.
thanks,
Very
Brad.
good.
Hey,
Thanks,
thank you
Brad.
for listening. It was wonderful
Bye,
to meet you all.
everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.